Hello, my name is Karen Hughes, and I'm the Domestic Violence Clinical Services Coordinator for the Life Crisis Center. And I want to welcome you to Life Crisis Today. Child abuse is not a topic that we want to talk about. We don't want to even think that it happens, but we know it does. And how do we talk about it? What is child abuse? Who reports? Where do you report? All kinds of questions. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And with me is Donna Leffew, and she is the Deputy Director for the Life Crisis Center. Welcome, Donna.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Child abuse is not easy, but you and I talk about it all the time. So, but others don't want to have to talk about it.
Right.
Let's do that. If a child were to come to me and say, "Oh my gosh, this is what's going on," and I can imagine me reacting like, "Oh my stomach starts churning and my head goes like, what do I do? What do I do?" Lots of things. What suggestions do you have if somebody has that happen?
Okay. Right. A lot of people do have children, especially if they have a trusting relationship with that child. They'll teachers, guidance counselors, family members. It's really important to remain calm. And so, as you were saying, the first thing is like, because it can be so upsetting, especially for parents and caregivers. So, it's important to remain calm. It's really, really important to convey that you believe that child. Even if you have any doubts, not to express those, because children are very quick to recant or suck it back in and not tell their story. Right. And we just want to give them the permission to be able to tell their story in a safe way. So we don't want to go into investigator mode. That will really mess things up. But just to remain calm and say, can you tell me more? Okay. It's important to acknowledge that it was brave, that it took a lot of courage to do that we believe them, that it's hard to tell. And I think it's also real important not to make any statements about the person they're reporting is hurting them. Even, a lot of time people's gut instinct is like, I'll get that, and go into all of that. And it's really important not to do that, because when children see someone that they care about get upset, a lot of times, again, they will suck that back in and not tell. And so it's real important to remain calm and just listen.
Right. So I'm thinking, what is abuse? Because I'm thinking, we know if somebody's hitting or leaving bruises, people always go to that, or sexual abuse. But there's so many different definitions. Right. How do you define it?
Right. So basically, there are 4 types of child maltreatment that are defined for reporting. We've also begun to address child trafficking, child sex trafficking in the state of Maryland, and that is another manner of maltreatment that occurs. It overlaps with child sexual abuse, but is in its own separate category, and it's a whole nother topic for another day, but so important. So child physical abuse, by definition for the state of Maryland, is someone who's responsible for the well-being of the child, inflicting injury to a child. And so, injury would be defined by tissue damage, some visible sign that some painful thing or harm has come to the child that's put the child in danger.
Right.
Child sexual abuse is about a behavior by a caretaker or someone in the household or a family member exposing a child to or doing something to a child of a sexual nature that they're not developmentally prepared for. It's different than child sexual assault. Okay. So it's important to know when we talk about reporting, and we'll be getting into that, is that the child sexual abuse is by a caregiver, household member, or family member. Okay. Those are things that are the Maryland state law says that we have to report. Okay. Child sexual assault would be akin to a child walking next door or over at the neighbor's house or something, the neighbor sexually assaulting that child. We do want to report that if there's someone unsafe in the neighborhood, but it doesn't fall under the state mandating reporting guidelines. Right. There is neglect, so that is someone in a caretaking role that has left a child in a situation where they could be harmed or they're harmed. It could be a lot of things, medical, could be leaving them alone, not taking care of them nutritionally, medically, educationally, a lot of those kinds of things. And then there is the middle injury. So that's a little bit trickier. And that is when someone in the caretaking role has done something that has psychologically harmed or damaged the child, so that the person can say, well, they were like this before, but then this thing happened, or these behaviors occurred by a caretaker, and now they are, behaving in a way that shows that something has happened to them that damaged them mentally or psychologically.
Okay. So there are the different types of reporting. Reporting.
Right.
Who reports? How do you report? Let's start with the who.
Right. That's an important one. And I think that's what, started this whole idea that we wanted to have this topic today.
Yeah.
Is because I had recently done some trainings and realized that there was a lot of confusion even amongst professionals about mandated reporting. Who reports? What do you have to report? And all of that. And it actually went back before that, where I had a phone call from someone in the community who had questions about mandated reporting, because they wanted to provide a service in the community, and was wondering what their legal obligations would be.
Okay.
So thinking that it would be a nice refresher for everyone.
Yes.
The state of Maryland says there are categories of people who must report child abuse when it's reported to them.
Okay.
That mandated, just means they're required, and that it comes with consequences. Like we could lose, a person could lose their license or job. There's been legislation on and off about penalties and further penalties that are not even in place now, but most employers would have pretty serious consequences as well for someone in the mandated reporting categories that don't report. And so that would be someone in the healthcare profession, a practitioner, human services workers, educators, and police officers, anyone in law enforcement.
Right. But also, everybody should be reporting.
Absolutely. The state of Maryland really does say that. They state that if you look up reporting on the government website, they're going to tell you that they expect all the citizens of Maryland to report. It's so important because children are potentially in dangerous situations or emotionally harmful situations. And they're the professionals. They tease it out. They sort it out. They do the investigating, and that's not our job. If we suspect, it's sort of the whole, if you see something, say something.
Right.
If you suspect it, report it. And then you're not responsible for figuring out, all of that. That puts it in their hands, and that the folks at the Department of Social Services, that's their expertise, and that's their area of, what they do. They help keep our children safe.
Yeah. So you were saying that of when is it and when you don't, or what's expectations of the mandated reporter. I'm thinking, like you said, that training where they said, well, what is this something you report? Is this not something you report?
Right.
Can you tease some of that out?
Sure. So with child, like for child sexual abuse, it goes past as for a child. That category is a little bit different because there's no statute of limitations around sexual abuse in the state of Maryland. But in addition to that, we're mandated to report lifelong. So if you have an adult who reports that they were sexually abused and they give identifying information, then it's expected that gets reported by a mandated reporter.
Right.
The way that is handled is that individual, that adult, is allowed the opportunity to say whether they want that pursued or not. It may not be for various reasons, but we are still mandated to report that.
Right. So you've been going over like who should report. So now comes to the how.
Right. And I think with the how is the what too, because we don't really, what does that mean? What's going to happen when you go to report? So all really important questions. As mandated reporters, there is now in Maryland a mandated reporting line. It's fairly new, but then they have a number. It's 1-800-91-PREVENT, or in numbers, it's 1-800-917-7383.
Okay.
Again, it's fairly new. In the past, mandated reporters were required to find the jurisdiction that the abuse occurred in. That's still real important information, because that where the abuse occurred, not where the child like say for example, a child lives in Wicomico, but they were on vacation in Worcester County at the beach, something occurred, then it would be reported to Worcester County
Right.
Department of Social Services.
Right.
And, the mandated reporters are asked to report to DSS and law enforcement. But now Maryland has child advocacy centers in all of the counties of the state.
Right, right.
So the child advocacy centers handle it where you have DSS and law enforcement all under one roof. But that is the requirement. Another important thing to know is that, within, you really are supposed to call immediately, particularly if the child is like, with someone where they're in immediate danger. But you have 24 hours, and you're held responsible for getting that information to them within that time. There's after call and on call, different things, but they handle that. You have to make that report.
Right.
As a mandated reporter, you need to follow up within 48 hours with a written report, and that is called the Form 180.
Right.
And what Form 180 can be found on maryland.gov. You can actually even just search Form 180 and it'll pull it up.
Okay.
And that's all the information that they're going to ask you for. You may not have all of it, but they want as much of the things that are on that form, and it's self-explanatory.
Right.
Where the person is that has been injured or harmed, how you got your information, the nature of it. If there's been any other prior history of harm done to the child, all of that, and then who you spoke with about that. But, all real important parts of reporting.
Okay. So if it's just like a neighbor or a family member, a person that's not a mandated reporter, how do they do it?
They can do the same thing. It's the 1-800 number, right?
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think the difference more is like about consequences, right? Mandated reporters are going to be held to a higher level of consequence, but I don't know civilly what if a person knows a child's being harmed and they don't report that, like they have to live with that too. And then, if that comes about and they knew that harm was being done and they didn't report it, what does that mean, from a civil level?
Yeah.
And those are legal questions that that's not my area of expertise, but
Sure,
Maryland really does expect their citizens to, if they see something, say something.
Right, right. If a regular person is calling, not the mandated, is this anonymous, or do you have to give your name, or is the name going to be told to the
Right. So
perpetrator?
They do tell us that it is a confidential report, and you don't have to give your name. It's helpful because they might have follow-up questions, or they may need that person as a witness or whatever it might be. But it's important for that not to prevent someone from reporting.
Right. I've been told that from investigators, like when I go to the Child Advocacy Center, we don't tell them where we got the information.
Right.
But yes, it is helpful to have their name, in case we as the investigator, have more questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are really worried about
I
that.
know.
Like family members, that's tricky because if
Yeah.
it can really change the family dynamics and cause lots of strife in the family. So I think there are a lot of people that only feel comfortable with reporting anonymously,
Right.
and their identity is supposed to be protected by those.
Yes. Yeah. Is there anything else? We've gone over a lot of information. We've talked about what is abuse. We've talked about who has to report and how you report. Is there anything we've forgotten?
I just think that I just would want to just reiterate how important it is.
Okay.
Because I've worked with people who didn't report something, and when they found out that another child was harmed, even if it was their own things, and that's just such a personal thing, it just really torments some people that the woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Right.
Like, I wish I had said something.
Right.
And we really, there are a lot of children in harm's way, and people think, well, I don't want to be a nosy person or a busybody or whatever, but it really is important to keep our children safe.
Yeah.
And the phrase "see something, say something," it encapsulates all of that.
Right.
I would just encourage people to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Donna. This is great information.
Okay.
I also want to thank you for joining us. As I said at the beginning, this is not easy to talk about. And maybe you still have some questions, or you do want to report, you're not sure what to do. There is that 800 number for the state of Maryland, but also you can call our hotline. The Life Crisis Center has a hotline, and you can talk to them. Our number is 410-749-HELP, Again, that number is 410-749-4357. If you're not a person who likes to talk, but you want to still get the information, we do have a talk chat, and that number is 898-211. We are a part of the 211 system, so that's another number that you can call and talk to somebody. And we're also part of the National Suicide Hotline, and that number is 988. So they're pretty simple numbers if you need to talk to somebody. We also have other ways to be reached. We have a website, www.lifecrisiscenter.org. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Please, if you have to reach out, don't hold it in, don't be afraid. We have lots of ways that we can help you. Or if you were abused and you want some treatment or want to see if there's help for you, we do that as well. So please reach out to us. I also want to thank PAC 14 to help make this show available. Thank you.